Great. So my name again is Charles Rogel, and I'm the Director of Business Development here at DecisionWise. I'm joined today by our President and CEO, Tracy Maylett.
Good afternoon.
And also the Senior Director of HR and Organization Learning at ASTD, Julie Nielsen.
Hello.
Julie, you're there? Great. We've been working with ASTD, gosh, Julie, I was just looking at our records back since 2004 now, conducting their employee engagement survey and also their 360 feedback surveys with their leaders. And today's webinar is going to be based on a recently published article called by the same name, Halting the Engagement Exodus, that was published in the Public Manager, one of the publications from ASTD. There's another publication that just was released as well called There's No Cookie Cutter Approach to Engagement that was also authored by Tracy Maylett and Julie Nielsen, and that is out in T&D magazine. And we'll be conducting another webinar later in June on that topic as well, but we'll pull some information from both of the articles today as we discuss this topic. I want to provide just a brief introduction on DecisionWise. We've been in business now for over 15 years, and we specialize in conducting employee engagement surveys, 360 feedback. We do a lot of leadership development, coaching, and also organization change. But our focus is always on turning feedback into results. So we're constantly conducting surveys, collecting feedback from employees, and then providing consulting and coaching on the results. Before I continue, I just wanted to make sure that I covered a few things. And one was that this webinar is scheduled to last 1 hour. If you do have questions, feel free to send those via the question toolbar, and we'll try to address those during the last 10 or 15 minutes of the webinar. And then tomorrow or on Monday, I'll be sending out an email with a link to the slides and also to the recording of this webinar so you have it for your resources. You can listen to the webinar using your computer speakers, or you can also dial in over the telephone. So now let me turn some time over to Julie to introduce ASTD, and then we'll continue with the rest of our webinar.
Thank you, Charles. ASTD is the largest association dedicated to workplace learning and professional developments, and these bullets that you see on the slide down there do a good job of capturing what I call our public face. Internally, I describe us as sort of a collision between a content house, an association, and actually a tech company, because we do use technology well to serve our members. And I mention that because today I'm really talking to you as an internal representative of ASTD, not necessarily how we always speak to the profession. We have revenue just under 30 million, about 100 staff, and just like all of you, we have the challenge of attracting and retaining top talent without unlimited resources. I always say ASTD doesn't act much like a nonprofit, but when it comes to human resources and the benefit budget and the learning budget, which I oversee, we're very typical. So I do have those same challenges. And let me just lead right into the charge that I was given by our CEO, Tony Bingham, and this goes back a couple of years. You know, he basically said, well, we need to figure out what the profile of an engaged employee within ASTD looks like, but more importantly, what does that mean to the industry as well? How do we kind of tie it up and share it with people in a very meaningful way? So there were really two reasons why he was asking this. You know, one is we wanted to get it right internally. We want to be and we are, a very well-run organization. But also, what does this mean for our members? We speak for the industry. We're a very hard-charging place. So he was saying, can you create a snapshot, an easy way to solve this problem? And I really turned to DecisionWise for some help with that. And there's a lot of research that explains why this is not such an easy task. Tracy, I'll let you go over that.
Yeah, Julie, thank you. And first of all, I want to express our gratitude for this opportunity to be with you here today. There's some interesting things that were brought up here through this charge, and it was really, as you mentioned, there are several different pieces behind it. One of those that we want to address is, what does the research show up out in terms of engagement? What do we see out there? We want to bring in some DecisionWise research as we do this, but let's turn to some very non-biased research. In other words, let's go to what is being said out there. We want to start with the U.S. government and some of the things that we see in terms of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So we're all very much aware that we are in a time, in an epoch where we're dealing with issues with unemployment. And as you look at this slide, you see back in 2009, you see a peak here of unemployment just about the 10 mark. As you see, we're starting to go down a little bit, and we're all very much aware of these figures. These are for 16 and over, non-farm seasonally adjusted. By the way, all this information is available on the Bureau of Labor Statistics site. So we just did a search, and this was as of last week for some of this information. So one of the things we're seeing is from the time of 2002 to where we are right now, a pretty significant increase in unemployment. We're all very much aware of this, very much on the news. But one of the things that's also interesting that we found in terms of what's out there was what we call the quit rate. Now the quit rate is defined by the government as the number of quits as a percentage of total employment. As we look at that, remember those numbers that we saw on the previous slide there and where that came in, we see that somewhere in the neighborhood of the 2009 mark, where we started to see unemployment go wild, it's interesting that we're starting to see quit rates go down. I'll show this in just a minute.
This is kind of voluntary separation.
Voluntary separation.
Quit on their own.
Yeah, exactly. So these are folks who just have quit for whatever reason that may be. These are not layoffs. These are not terminations for cause, etc. Now I want to show you a slide here that, and these are extended out, which is the reason why we're seeing different slides here, but we wanted to get the same time periods in here. So we see 2002. We take that to 2010, and this vertical line that's here shows us a similar time period. So right about the time when unemployment was the highest, we see number of quits at the lowest.
Which isn't very surprising. I mean,
not very surprising, right. But one of the things that is surprising is we see high unemployment rates, people quitting. As unemployment increases, the number of quits decreases, right? So everyone knows that intuitively, but the interesting piece of this is that people are now being locked into the organization voluntarily. And one of the things we want to address on this webinar is why are they locked into the organization?
And then what does that do to their engagement?
Exactly. What does that do to levels of engagement? So let's take this back to real productivity numbers here. So rather than just addressing number of people that quit, number of people that leave, et cetera, let's take this into a little bit more detail on what's really going on in the organization. I want to refer to the expert here, Dwight Schrute. Would I ever leave this company? Look, I'm all about loyalty. In fact, I feel like part of what I'm being paid for here is loyalty. But if there were something else somewhere else that valued loyalty more highly, I'm going wherever they value loyalty the most. A classic statement. And I think it's right. The idea here is that I'm engaged, I'm loyal in what I do, but if that loyalty could be better served somewhere else, or I could be paid more for that loyalty, or in air quotes here, I'm going there. One of the things we want to address is what's going on right now with that loyalty, what's happening with levels of engagement in an organization. One of the things we're seeing on a very macro level here is we're starting to see a decreased investment in employees. Now, when I say decreased investment, I want to refer back to Julie here in just a minute because she has some very interesting information on this, and I'm going to ask her very specifically what she's noticed. But we've also seen an expected increase in employee output. So what that means is as people are being laid off in the organization, as people are not hiring, organizations do not bring on additional people. They're not backfilling some of these positions. One of the basic areas that we focused on in this article was, it came from one of the things that Julie and I had a conversation on, and that was as we stop backfilling these positions, many employees are being asked to fill the roles that 3 or 4 people were doing previously. So I, as an employee, instead of just doing my job, I now have 3 or 4 jobs. Well, as we look at that, that should result in increased employee output, but one of the questions is, does it really happen? Julie, you have some interesting information on this. I'd like to understand a little bit more about what you've seen in terms of decreased investment and increased employee output.
I do. Let me answer that question, Tracy, from 2 ways. And the first is externally. I think everybody sees information published on the drop in benefit spending. For example, 401k contributions have been lowered or cut. Raises were either down or flat. What ASTD has found, however, is that the learning component has actually increased. In fact, in our State of the Industry report for 2011, we showed a 13.6% increase in the average, what we call direct expenditure per employee, which is kind of the macro definition for learning. So decreased benefit investment. A good thing is increased investment in learning, which is an investment in people. But let me comment on what we see inside ASTD as well, since that's how all of this got started. So internally, we are actually investing more. Now, we've been very careful with what we did with our benefit package. We have trimmed in some ways that cause the least amount of impact on the people we call ASTDers. But we are definitely asking more of people, as you were explaining. And our goal has been, we're asking more, but let's make sure we make them more effective. We give them the tools that we need, and that we're actually growing the scope of their roles and what they're doing. So we're asking for more, we're giving them good career development, and we're supporting them in what they need.
Interesting. I want to focus on that here in just a moment, because one of the things we're seeing as we conduct employee surveys, we'll give you some results in just a moment, is that perception of lack of investment in the company, and the part of the employees. And what I'm hearing you say, that was an astounding figure, that over 13% increase. That's pretty amazing in terms of investment in training dollars and learning development.
Yeah, I guess, Julie, I was going to follow up. This is Charles. Was that just recently this year? I mean, did we see a dip the past 3 years as the economy kind of tanked?
We actually did not, and that's good news for ASTD, because our message is, especially when times are tough, that learning is the way you're going to turn your organization around, investing in your people and developing them. What other research shows as well, in fact, our research study on learning's role in employee engagement shows how important learning is to engagement.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I want to really focus on that here in just a moment, because that is a piece of overall engagement. One of the things we find is a direct correlation between overall levels of engagement and the perception of what's being invested in the employee. So this is at a very macro level. I want to address the micro level here in just a moment, or the personal level. But before we do that, I'd like to focus a little bit on this idea of, are we receiving an increase in terms of efficiency? So technically, if we're paying less, we're not investing as much, at least in the eyes of their employees. We don't have as many employees as we had before. What happens to overall levels of efficiency? So we're going to refer back to the Bureau of Labor statistics here. Labor productivity. Now, this is kind of an interesting one. You have to understand how to read this chart just a little bit. This is output per hour as a percentage of change a quarter ago. So what that means is I'm not necessarily, these numbers that we see here are differences or deltas in the previous quarter. So what you're seeing is the ups and downs here. Now, remember that date that we showed you back in 2009, how that's when we started to see these layoffs, companies consolidating, drop in expenditures per employee, etc. And this was back in the 2009 range. So what we see back in 2009 is all of a sudden we see skyrocketing efficiency. Okay, remember the time periods again here. So about the first quarter into the second quarter of 2009, after all this was happening, we did see an increase in efficiency. But notice what's happening. This was very short-lived. In other words, for a period of about 3 to 6 months, we did see that increase in overall efficiency. But then look what's happening over the long term. So we look at the trends here, not a very good trend. Yeah, we're going down, and then we're kind of flatlining as that happens.
So does this mean that it's gone up to a certain level and plateaued, or we've actually gotten some decreases, do you think, in productivity?
Good question. Remember, this is as a comparison to last quarter. So this is what we're looking at is, did it get better over last quarter, or did it get worse over last quarter? So what we're looking at here is a continual, it's gotten worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. Whether or not we see a plateau, I don't know. That's what we would tend to expect here. The important part that we notice is very clearly that we can get short-term efficiency at the long-term expense of employees. And I believe this is one of the reasons why we're starting to see this engagement exodus, is exactly what happened about 3 years ago. And we're really starting to see some of these side effects.
So short-term benefit to the bottom line, long-term effects on the employee.
You got it, which then in turn creates this circle, which now we're starting to see decrease in efficiency levels. So on a personal level, that's kind of at the macro level. Let's look at a very personal level. One of the things that we've seen over the last 3 years, and I'll give you some very clear statistics on this, is that it is affecting people internally in terms of burnout. We saw that in terms of productivity. They were able to be productive for 3 to 6 months and very efficient, And then all of a sudden we saw this huge drop. Also, that results in sometimes negativity about the job. We're seeing this in a very real perspective when we do our 360 degrees feedback. We're starting to see that even the boss's employees are starting to see the lack of commitment of that boss to his or her position and job. Julie, you have you made some interesting statements about this as well. I'd like to understand a little bit more of what have you seen in terms of the personal level.
You know, I've seen two key things, Tracy, in regard to this. And one is, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about this in a few minutes, but one that when organizations just do things to keep people, fun things, let's do this, let's be nice, let's add this, that the doing of things doesn't necessarily keep people. It might be fun for the day or fun for the week, but it doesn't do anything to prevent that burnout, and you can lose good people when that happens. The other thing that we were seeing is when this negativity does come around, and it can, that having the wrong people in the organization has a clear effect on everybody else. So my point is that burnout, giving people development, more projects, involving them in what's going on, done the wrong way, could generate burnout. Done the right way, it can actually increase development and build careers. Done the wrong way, it creates negativity. Done the right way, it creates positive, positive vibes about the organization.
That's such a key point that you just mentioned right there, that it does have that. It is a double-edged sword. Done the wrong way, it does create burnout. Done the right way, it does create that growth and opportunity for development. We're going to see in a few slides here where we talk about what we call the engagement spectrum. And one of the things that we see that is that fully engaged employees are those who are being stretched. It's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, that's what creates engaged employees quite often, is that stretching or that creative pull that you see there. But at the same time, when we start burning out employees, as we're doing 3 times the number of jobs that we did previously, and it's not the right kind of work, we start to see that burnout. I'd like to, Charles, can we take a poll here? Is that okay? Is now a good time to do that?
Yeah, so we have a poll that I'm going to post that we'd like everyone to participate in. And this poll is, during the past year, have levels of employee engagement increased, decreased, or remain the same? And this is at your own organization. So I'm launching the polls now.
And we want to keep this during the past year. It varies a lot, right? So if we were to go back 5 years, there would be a difference.
So we think in the past 3 years you've probably seen a dip. We're wondering now, as we're kind of on the cusp of coming out of the recession, are our perceptions looking up? Do you think that we're kind of turned the corner and that engagement this past year increased? So I'll leave this open for a little bit more, and then we'll show you the results. This will give you a good idea of what other people are experiencing besides yourself.
We're seeing some interesting results as these come in. I think they're fairly reflective of what we've seen on surveys.
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting as we look at these results to see what happens in folks that are here. By the way, this webinar did receive a lot of great attention in terms of attendees. This is one of those hot topics right now, isn't it? The topic of engagement.
Yeah, because people are struggling. What do I do with it? As an HR manager, I've got limited resources now. How do I really make an impact on engagement overall? I'm going to close the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. And as you see here, most people are saying that engagement has decreased in the past year in their organization.
And what are we looking at, Charles? You're closer than I am. Is that about 2/3 say that?
Yeah, so 64% decrease, 17 increase, and 19 stayed the same. So about the same on the increase-decrease side, or stayed the same side, but the decrease numbers are quite high.
Yeah, and actually that's gone down a little bit over what we typically see. So the last couple of years, that would have been overwhelmingly, as well it is today, but in terms of decrease, even higher than that.
Yeah, and that's a little surprising to me, because I would have thought that people might have been more on the increase side, where things are getting better, there's more, I think people are sensing more opportunity in organizations, but it looks like this kind of gloomy atmosphere is sticking around in some places.
Yeah, so what does that mean? Well, I want to touch on just a couple of things here. The first one I want to address is this idea of what happens when we have layoffs in an organization. There's been a lot of work done on a term that's called, or a phrase called, the survivor syndrome. So what does that do to organizations? This was an interesting study. It was published in the Academy of Management Journal, so it's a very academic journal. It was also reemphasized in a couple of other publications. One is in Harvard Business Review. Another one was in HR Magazine where they highlighted the study. They found that when layoffs occur, the number of employees that exit the organization is actually 5 times the number of employees that were laid off. Now, this study was done in 2008, so this was kind of before we started to see some of this engagement exodus. This was back when employees had more choice than they did previously. We're in different times now, and I wouldn't certainly expect that number to be as high. But our point here is that are we in for an engagement exodus in a couple different ways? My other question on this one is just for your consideration, a rhetorical question, is who are the employees that are leaving? Are they the engaged employees? Are they the employees who are performing well? One of the things that we're finding is that the employees who do extremely well quite often still have those choices to go somewhere else. It's those employees who are underperforming that are stuck in the organization.
I think that's key. As you see layoffs and 100 people get laid off and 500 more leave, are they saying, oh, the ship is going down, I better get off while they're getting good, while the opportunities are still out there?
Sure,
so
yeah.
They leave because they don't see the opportunity anymore.
And Charles, if you're a great employee, you have opportunities that are out there.
Yeah.
But you may not consider those as being opportunities that may stick around. So let's talk about the physical exodus here for just a moment. And I'll give you some details. These come from various sources that are out there, and they're easily Googled, and you can find these quite easily. 49% of employees intend to seek new jobs. This is something that we find as well. 49%, that's pretty close to we see somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1/3 to 1/2.
And this question on employee survey is usually phrased, in the next year, do you see yourself staying with the organization or leaving or seeking other employment?
We also ask another question somewhere along the lines, if a job came along that had equal or equivalent benefits and opportunities, would I stay or go?
Yeah.
Next one is 78% of U.S. workers feel that the current job market is the worst they have seen in their lifetime. Interesting, and that statistic has held true for the last 3 years. 50% of Generation Y employees say that they are actively seeking interviews with other organizations. Okay, so now we bring the Generation Yers into the equation and really separate.
Well, they're always seeking interviews with other organizations.
You think so, right? Isn't that one of the characteristics, at least that's kind of a generality or stereotype. 64% of companies are concerned that they will lose key employees in a better job market, and about half are concerned that they'll lose key executives. That's pretty astounding when you start thinking that we're talking about key employees here. We're not talking about all employees. About half will lose key executives. So that's the physical exodus. I want to talk a little bit more, less about the physical exodus and more about the engagement exodus. Okay, so we've lost their physical presence, but have we lost the mind, body, and spirit here as well, right?
The people that stay.
The people that stay. So this comes from a DecisionWise 2011 benchmark. We have a database. Our 2011 database was about 9.2 million responses. So this is certainly one of the most comprehensive databases that are out there. What we're doing is showing you some statistics that have just now been gathered within the last 3 weeks and compiled. Pretty interesting stuff. So Charles, the first thing we see here is employee engagement has dropped by 25% in top performers. Now the question that always comes up is, how do I identify top performers? Well, this is based off of a couple different things. One is we actually look at performance reviews where they're rated. We also look at key performance indicators within the organization and identify those top performers. And we see that engagement has dropped by 25%. Now that hurts. That one really worries me. 34% of employees do not speak up for fear of retribution. Interesting. So 1/3 of the employees, and when we talk about retribution and we go in and find out more about what they see as retribution, they're saying retribution is anything that could possibly jeopardize their job, their status, or their standing in the organization. So we have 1/3 of the employees that we're not taking advantage of in terms of getting their valuable input. Only 57% of employees respond favorably to questions related to growth and development opportunities within their organization. Julie, this is exactly what you were just talking about. Even though we are investing, companies are investing in organizations in terms of training and development dollars, 57% of employees are saying, yeah, but I'm not receiving the growth and development opportunities, and 47% feel that there are few opportunities for advancement. So we're seeing kind of an interesting perception or misperception that exists within organizations based on what we're seeing very clearly with very hard facts and data from ASTD. Interesting.
So in other words, there Oh, go ahead, Julie.
Please.
Oh, okay. One of the things I had noticed as well is that when the economy is as bad as it has been in many parts of the country, when people stay put, that's going to limit development, upward development as well. But an interesting thing that we see here at ASTD is that that doesn't limit what I would call scope development, the broadening of people's positions. That type of development can be immune from the economy.
I like the way you phrase that, scope development. And I think that goes back to your idea of, is it development that stretches people in the right way versus development that it really isn't development. We code word at that. It's just piling more work on. But change in scope of assignments and responsibilities.
And this would lead me to conclude that it's really how training and development is positioned in the organization. Are they really talking about expanding the scope, or there's just more training classes available and people really aren't seeing the intent or the benefit, I guess, in the way that they want?
Yeah. Well, 90% feel they make a valuable contribution to the organization. 34% do not feel this work is valued. And 40% do not feel valued as employees themselves. That's tough.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Tough statistic to look at. Okay, so let's keep going. We have the personal engagement exodus here to where they're physically leaving the organization. We also have the exodus where their minds are and their spirits and their desire and their willpower, their will is leaving the organization as well. So what we're starting to see is, I'm seeing some of the data that says what we're doing right now is we're losing some key talent. Now, Julie, you have some interesting figures on this. You have some interesting data from ASTD that talks a little bit more of what's going on within this. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you see in terms of losing top talent?
I do. I think the question is really more, are we investing enough to keep that top talent? And of course, we focus a lot on the importance of learning in keeping those people. A little while ago, I mentioned that the investment in learning had gone up by 13.6% in 2010. But everybody write a number down, because I think this is very important. The average direct expenditure per employee on, so this is, remember, this is that consolidated learning, is $1,228. And so this is from the comparative assessment in ASTD's State of the Industry report, if you're interested in learning more about this. But that's an important number because that, aside from things like tuition programs, that is looking at needs, doing needs assessments, and figuring out what does this particular employee need to do, need to know to get to the next level, and also to contribute to the bottom line. So now what we also see is that learning, so our own research shows how important learning is to engagement. And I'm just now looking at a study that we did a couple of years ago, and the results are pretty intriguing. Let me throw out a few statistics here. So more than 4 out of every 5 respondents say that learning is high or very high in terms of engagement, its importance to engagement. About 2/3 of respondents said that the quality of learning and training was really important. And what this means to me is, don't just throw something out to me. Make sure it's good. Make sure it has an effect. Make sure it really equips me. So if the quality is not good, it's going to disengage me. 54% said just the breadth of opportunities boost engagement as well. So again, we don't want to just throw out one aspect, one training program, one opportunity. The breadth is very important. And not surprisingly, career development opportunities were very high. 76% of our respondents said that that was huge in driving engagement to a very high extent. So here's what I thought was most interesting. The study suggested, and I'm actually just going to read a sentence here from it. The study also suggests that one of the best ways of forging a culture of engagement is by ensuring that organizational leaders, including immediate supervisors, have better skills in the area of engagement improvement. So here's the shocker. Only 29% of respondents said that their leaders currently take effective actions to improve employee engagement. So I think what I'm doing is laying the backdrop here for the coming slide.
That's interesting, because what we're seeing there is very, very clear ties to engagement with development opportunities, and we see this in the surveys. But we're also seeing that what's happening is employers, at least in their minds, are not investing in their development, their growth, and education.
Hey, Julie, are those numbers coming from that State of the Industry report?
These are actually coming from a different report called Learning's Role in Employee Engagement. And both of these are very readily available from ASTD.
Okay, so I'll provide links to everyone afterwards on how to access those two reports.
Yeah, I might cap those, Charles, with the overall summary. Clearly showed that higher reported levels of engagement are correlated with higher levels of not just market performance, but so revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer sat, which is something ASTD really focuses on because we are a member-focused organization.
Yeah.
Very good. That's one of the, we're seeing very clearly as we look at our research that if I feel that I am being invested in, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a financial investment, but the company cares about me, invests in me, and I feel like I'm growing, these stretch assignments that I take on now take the form of engagement opportunities versus opportunities for me to become disengaged in what I do.
Yeah, am I just picking up the slack for someone else that got laid off, or am I really improving myself?
Interesting. So another unfortunate scenario that we see is, so we talked about those employees that leave the organization. So 8 years ago, we were very concerned about how do I get employees. It's difficult to even bring them on. We're out there courting those employees. And that'll happen again. So you just heard my prediction. That's going to happen again. We're back in that realm again eventually. But we're now seeing a different danger, and that is, what about those employees who don't leave the organization that we kind of want to leave the organization? I mean that in a not a negative way here, but there are some of these that quit, stay, and corrupt. And we see that very clearly within the organization in levels of engagement. We saw from the poll itself that levels of engagement have gone down in the organization. This was your feedback to us. We also see that in what we study, that it says very clearly that engagement is dropping and has gone down. So we have employees, based on what we saw from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that stay with the organization, that we call these employees who kind of retired mentally a number of years ago and forgot to tell anybody that they left the organization. The body's still there, but the mind's not. We call these quit and stay employees. They tend to quit, stay, and corrupt. Julie, what do you see?
Well, we definitely see that. We have seen that at ASTD, and the results for us have been to keep on our employees in terms of, where are you? Are you engaged? Are you happy? Where are you in the spectrum that we'll talk about in a few minutes? Because if they're not, we want to keep moving them out. Are we ready to go ahead and talk about the 3 factors of engagement?
Yeah, let's talk about that. I want to address just a couple factors here, and then we'll move on to the 3 factors. Is that okay?
Okay.
So I'll just throw out some numbers here. First of all, again, some of the survey results that we've seen in 2006 and 2007, engagement levels, meaning the positive responses, were between 64 and 72% positive. The neutral responses, those are people who kind of gave on a 5-point scale, tended to give the 3s, were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 20% of the responses were neutral. In 2010 to 2011, nearly half of survey responses on some questions, and those tend to relate to relationship with the organization, they tend to relate to relationship with the boss, and tend to relate also to levels of employee development. We're receiving about half of responses on some of those questions being neutral responses. So, Julie, the reason why I wanted to address this ahead of time is because one of the things we're seeing is that employees are kind of taking some of them, the I don't know attitude. It's not necessarily that we're not being developed. It's just that I'll kind of wait and see what happens here. And because of that, they quit, stay, and corrupt. So, yes, let's talk about those 3 factors of engagement, if that's all right. Can we start with satisfaction? Does that work?
Let's do. And really, this is the most common question I have received since we published the 2 articles. And the question has been, so what's really the definition of engagement? There are a number of them out there. And from an ASTD perspective, I would say the engagement, the definition that we're going to talk about today is what has not just stuck at ASTD, but it's what has mattered, and it's actually changed our workforce. So And Tracy, why don't I'll talk about the 3 components and you fill in. So we talk about engagement being the intersection of 3 components, with satisfaction being the first one, effectiveness being the second, and motivation being the third. And in the sweet spot, if you will, is that intersection in the very middle where all those 3 things come together. This was a learning thing for me because I think I probably early on equated engagement with being passionate about what's going on, but being passionate without having the tools to be effective does not equal engagement. Being really motivated by the mission of the organization, but not being satisfied with how the organization is being run doesn't lead to engagement. And not being satisfied in general with things like benefits, organizational policies, that's not going to lead to engagement as well. And what you see is that all 3 are required. The definition falls down if you don't have all 3.
I like that. I like the way you describe that. When we look at something like satisfaction, what we're referring to is we see those in organization development terms as hygiene factors. So these are these areas that the possession of do not necessarily engage me, but the lack thereof cause me to be disengaged. They do include things like basic pay, compensation, just those kind of things that really are hygiene factors. That effectiveness piece, I think you covered it nicely, is do I have the tools and resources I need to do my job? I can be excited about my job, but if I don't have a laptop to be able to do it, I'm not very effective and therefore become disengaged.
Or the training.
Or the training, exactly right. Absolutely, that's perfect. And you see that these interrelate too. The motivation piece is what I intrinsically bring to the party, and Julie, I know you're going to talk about this very extensively here in just a moment because this is key. Some employees don't bring individual motivation to the party, and because of that, they simply are not engaged in what they do. We'll talk about that here in just a minute, but we've all seen the outcomes of engagement. There have been a number of studies that show over there on the right-hand side that we're really talking about real business measures in terms of effectiveness here. So when we look at engagement, that's kind of the level that we're looking at and what this entails. Julie, we've had some good conversations about what we refer to as the engagement spectrum, and I think this was kind of an aha for ASTD. Would you mind just talking a little bit about what that is and how that applied to ASTD and what you noticed?
It was truly an aha, not just for me or for our CEO, but for literally every manager who was sitting in the room when Tracy was presenting the results of our annual survey, which is something that DecisionWise has done for us for, what did we say, 8 years?
Yeah, 8 years now.
I could tell this was a big hit with our managers because after the meeting I got emails from probably at least 12 people saying, I want that one slide in particular that Tracy had. And when we were presenting it, or when Tracy was presenting it, we all were hanging on this slide looking at this the spectrum that goes from fully disengaged employees who nobody wants, right? They're bored, they're frustrated, they're this quit, stay, and corrupt group that Tracy's been talking about. It goes all the way to the fully engaged group. We would all say, gee, we want fully engaged people. But I think what threw people is when you look at these middle categories, the opportunity group and the key contributor. Now, Tracy, you would say that most people fall into the key contributor category, right?
Yeah, we find about 55% of employees typically do.
Okay. So I think what had our managers thinking is, wow, I know my people aren't maybe at that bottom end. I'm not sure all of them are at that top end, but what's really going on in the middle there? And they were really digesting this key contributor and saying, well, I think that's a good thing. They meet expectations. They take a few risks. They respond well to me and to other leaders, but they're kind of doing their jobs, but they're pretty committed. And then what the managers looked at was the difference between that definition where so many people fall and looking at fully engaged and saying, wow, think what things could be like if I could get my team into that fully engaged category, constantly learning, taking calculated risks, feeling stretched, and that's that good kind of stretch we were talking about, not the bad kind, really having a lot of personal satisfaction, but loving your job. And I'm not going to say ASTD is at 100% for people, loving their jobs and walking around saying that, but this is probably where we've come a very long way to trying to figure out how do we get people into this category. So, so I think, to me, this is probably the most important takeaway from this webinar is this summary. And I guess the second most important thing will be, how do you help people make that transition or get out of the organization?
I like that. I think that we've worked so hard for the last, it's been about 70 years since this was introduced in terms of what we want from employees, that we work to get key contributors in our organization. That's been kind of the goal. And because of that, we have about 55% of our employees in that category that are committed to what they do. But can you imagine what would happen if we were to channel that energy into having those fully engaged employees and the difference that may exist there? I don't think many organizations understand that. What they're shooting for really is that key contributor. And to a degree that's fine, but can you imagine what would happen to an organization if we had fully engaged employees that were doing there? One of the questions that always comes up is, how do we make this happen? All right, so bottom line is, what is the magic sauce, the secret recipe that we need in order to make this happen? And it goes back to Tony Vingham's original request here that Julie started as we addressed this, is what engages people? There are a number of organizations that have reported that there are a certain number of things that would engage people, and many of those are right on. But the bottom line is that the cookie-cutter approach to engagement? Is everybody engaged by the same things? So I'll just throw up a couple of studies that we've done here. One of our clients is a fast food chain with about 400-plus locations, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50,000 employees, I believe it was. They were engaged, as we looked at the research, by three main factors. This came out very, very clearly. First of all, the ability to associate with friends on the job. That's what engaged this group of people. They were engaged by flexible schedules. Comments such as, it allows me to work so I can take care of my daughter while my husband is at work. Really, that was one of the things, the flexible schedules. They had a lot of students in this as well that loved that flexible schedule. One of the big ones, and this is amazing how often this came up, they got half off of a lunch, which, by the way, equated to about 78 cents per week per employee when they took advantage of this. Extremely inexpensive when you look at it overall. But really, those are the three factors that, as we looked at it, were the top correlative factors in terms of engagement in this fast food chain. We then took a look at an upper scale restaurant with somewhere in the neighborhood of about 40,000 employees, 110 locations. They were engaged, on the other hand, by opportunities for growth, development, and advancement. So that came up number one on the list. Number two was the trust that they had of their managers. Notice it doesn't say in their managers, it says of their managers.
Their managers trusted them.
You got it, exactly. They felt that the managers trusted them to do a good job. This also related to autonomy. They appreciated that autonomy that existed there. And unique to this group was guest satisfaction. They took great pride and pleasure in the ability to delight their guests, their ability to serve that customer and walk away knowing that that customer felt like they had just received a wonderful experience. So when we look at this and we try to generalize and say employees are engaged by this, we're starting to see that in each organization it varies, and in fact, even within an organization it may vary. So this is the same industry, they're both in food services, yet they're engaged by different factors.
And even the change between industries, so if you look at healthcare, manufacturing, professional services, those drivers are much different as well.
You're exactly right. So the question always comes up, and this comes to our organization at least weekly. I receive at least an email or a phone call. We need to figure out how to engage our employees, which is the challenge. The reality, however, and it's not that easy. The reality is engagement is not something you do to employees. It's a choice. So when we come with the idea that we need to engage our employees, we need to figure out what it is, we're assuming that there is a lever that we can pull that will engage the employees. We do this to them rather than a choice.
Sometimes, or a lot of times, it's removing barriers or things within the organization that are hampering engagement for employees as opposed to actually implementing a new program or doing something extra.
Right. Now, Julie, you've seen a lot of this in some of the conversations that we've had. You've mentioned some of this. What would you like to elaborate on this piece? Because I think it's an interesting part.
Well, I had to kind of chuckle, Tracy, because I think we can acknowledge that I'm one of those people who's called you to say, well, come engage us, come fix us. So, but I would like to point out that was an awfully long time ago when I did that. I wish I could say that I popped into ASTD knowing exactly how to do everything and did everything right, but that's not the case. And I think one of those areas where I didn't do everything right when we first got started was in, I would have told you we were looking at engagement all along, but we really weren't. We were really looking at employee satisfaction. And one of the mistakes I would encourage everybody to avoid is, I'll call it the challenge of the checklist. And for, I don't know, maybe the first 3 years, 4 years that we were doing these pretty major surveys, every year we would come away with a checklist. Sometimes it was really big. The first one probably had 100 to-dos on it. And then in later years, it was probably shorter, maybe more meaningful, but they were still a checklist. Let's go do this, and everybody will be more satisfied, or I thought at the time, more engaged. Check this off. And let me try to think of some examples here. I remember one of the to-do items being take minutes at what we call our direct reports meeting, which is the group that reports to our CEO. Now, don't get me wrong, that was a really good thing, and we still do it, and everybody likes it because they learn what's going on at that senior level, but it was a thing that we did. You know, HR needs to have a camera to take more pictures at employee events. So, so they would check off, you know, check, 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 we did those things. But when you get to the reality, like what's on the bottom of your slide, what it is where engagement changed our systems. It wasn't a checklist. It changed our thinking, and it changed our systems. What do I mean by that? It changed how we acquire our talent. It changed how I run what we call ASTD University, which is our employee development program. It changed even how we compensate people. So, you know, we moved away. We got from just that challenge that you're talking about in the checklist, and we moved into that reality of what does this really mean and what does it change. So that's probably a long-winded answer, but
well, Julie,
shows where we've been.
Noticed about you and the organization about ASTD is that it's now become a way of being, not a way of doing.
Yes.
So it's certainly embedded in the culture. It's interesting that even though we explain this to organizations, they still come back and say, yes, but what are those key things that I can do to promote engagement? Well, there are some. And when we talk about a cookie-cutter approach, we're not saying that there are certain things or certain questions that you can ask and really focus on every single time to promote engagement in the organization, but there is one commonality we see very regularly. And I just want to address that for the next 5 minutes of our webinar as we end here, and that is the idea of what role does a manager play within engagement. Can a manager, first of all, can a manager motivate somebody or engage somebody? I think the answer to that question is no. It's not something you do to employees, but what really is the role of a manager within engagement? You look at one of the things that we find very interesting as we do comparisons between employee engagement scores and 360-degree feedback scores is the factor that engaged managers have engaged employees. That seems like one of those no-brainers, doesn't it, Charles? That you just look at and say, well, yeah, of course that makes sense. But statistically, there's a very huge correlation between that, the way the manager, a supervisor of a group, responds to those engagement questions and the responses provided by his or her direct reports. Very clear, very strong correlation. Another thing is that when we find that on their 360-degree feedback scores, when managers show that they are have a level of engagement, you can see this by various questions, it shows their employees quite often respond the same way. So very clear correlation. On the other side of that, disengaged managers, it's very clear, have quite often disengaged employees. So one of the things that we look at when we're asked to work with an organization or a department with low engagement scores, the first thing we do is check the manager. We find very often that disengaged employees are those that fall under a disengaged manager.
I'm going to add here, Tracy, one other anecdote is that you need to have a good manager to kind of play the game. So a requirement of having engaged employees is a good manager. If you have a bad manager, they're going to be disengaged.
Right, it's price of admission, right?
Right. And then you can still have good managers and disengaged employees, but there's other factors then that you have to look at to see what's really driving that. But far ahead of everything else is a good manager does lead, or at least allows employees to be engaged.
I think that's exactly right. So it leads to the next questions here. Really, what is the manager's role in creating engagement? Julie, would you like to address this? Would you mind?
would love to, because I think this is really powerful, and I think it's where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. So I mentioned a few minutes ago how important it is, looking back on the ASTD survey on learning and engagement, how important it is that leaders take effective actions to improve employee engagement. So to me, that sounds a little scary and hard to do, but the good news is it's not. And when you look at the manager's role, it really does boil down to just 3 critical components. And so I think this is some good news to bring back to everybody's managers. So number 1, understand what engages the team, create the culture in which they can choose to be engaged. And this is really big for us, because what this drove internally at ASTD was a conversation about who are we and what really matters. It was sort of funny. We had spent probably 4 years ago, a lot of time involving just about everybody in the organization on figuring out what our values really were. Like many organizations, we came up with a whole bunch, so many that even I couldn't remember, even though I was on the team and I head up human resources. So back out again we went a year before last and said, who are we? What are these values? What do they really mean? And this time we came up with 3 memorable ones: teamwork, communication, and people, all with the foundation of accountability. And we said, this is the culture that we're going to create. And that's really what we did for number 1. And our managers play a large role in helping create that culture. Now, let me add, if they don't help create that culture, it's a problem. Now, they've got me helping, coaching, trying to make sure that they reflect it, but we don't ignore it. That's probably the key point. So our work on values was really linked to creating that culture that we kind of thought we had all along, but we were really making it clear, and we've made it very clear over the last 2 years. Number 2, hire and develop employees who can engage in that culture. Well, I mentioned that engagement really changed our systems. Satisfaction made us go do things. Engagement made us change our systems. And this is a good example of that. We said, okay, who are we really hiring? I'd say ASTD is quite good at hiring the right people in terms of our retention rates. But what we've really shifted toward is making sure we don't just go hire the most qualified person. We go hire the most qualified person who's going to thrive in our culture. And many highly qualified people don't get hired as a result of that.
Julie, how do you know if they will thrive in that culture? What do you do to make that determination?
Ooh, it's a tough one. It comes down to really, I think, the HR part of our interview process. And I'm not going to say I have any perfect system for doing it, but we have very real conversations. And I don't want to get in trouble with HR people here, but I don't stop at the normal HR interview questions. I push back sometimes and say, well, what does that mean? In fact, recently I actually asked an applicant, I said, you're pretty intense. Has anybody ever told you you're really loud and you almost yell? And the applicant almost fell over. But it was true, because I'm thinking that's not going to fit in our culture if this person's actually yelling at people. So we have very real conversations. We ask very real questions, and we're pretty hard on the answers. And then we have a good follow-up afterwards in talking with all of the people who actually interviewed. So 3rd point, don't blow it. And this is what I would call, and Tracy, I think you've said this before, just get out of the way. And that's why I said this whole thing, these 3 points are very easy. It's create the right culture, go find the people who thrive in that culture, and then get out of the way, don't blow it, let people work. Kind of an indicator that there might be a problem to me is when I have people managers who are a little too focused on the people management side of what they do, so much so that they're being too involved. They're trying to show people exactly how to do their jobs instead of letting them figure it out. They maybe hold on to projects instead of passing good projects on down the line. So I tell people, just let them go. Keep that good high level of management and communication, but then let people rock and roll and do their jobs.
I think this plays along with the idea that a manager cannot necessarily motivate somebody, but a manager can certainly cause somebody to be disengaged in what they do.
I think that's exactly the case.
You know, these are very, very simple, very spelled out, but they're deep. There's a lot involved in here, and this is the reason why some make it, some don't. I thought it was very interesting. One of the things I found out about ASD is the way you incorporate the idea of, first of all, let's create a culture in which people can choose to be engaged. That's a different twist versus let's engage people. Let's create a culture where they can choose. And second of all, let's hire people, even if they may be the best skilled or the best person in that. If they can't be the kind of employee that chooses to be engaged in that culture, we don't want that person on our team. And then step out of the way. Really don't blow it. Don't cause an employee to have something that will disengage that employee in his or her job. Good, interesting stuff. So Charles, I think we've had a couple of questions here. One of those is one that I noticed a little bit earlier on, and I think Julie's done a great job of answering that question, but I just want to reemphasize it and kind of fold it into one question, and that is, what is the role that T&D, or training and development, or learning plays in engagement? Julie, can you just summarize that for us? I think your points were very good.
Yeah. What we see is that through formal learning or informal learning, you're growing people either in their scope of their current jobs, or you're growing them to develop into the next roles, into promotional opportunities, both at the current organization and equipping them to move on to other organizations as well. So to me, true development is helping people feel like they're making the most of their skills, their qualifications, they're being challenged. And this is, by the way, this is something that's very easy for everybody to do. Give people good projects. I never find anybody who's too busy to take on a good project. But focus on the importance of formal development as well as informal development.
So we're not just talking anymore about sending someone off to a training class. You and I have used that phrase quite a bit, sending someone off to training.
Right, right. That's certainly still an option. Public training, custom training in-house. We actually do both, so those still exist. But if you walked around ASTD and asked employees what kind of development you'd have, I'd say probably 60% would say, oh, let me show you what I've been working on.
Very good.
Let me ask another question, Julie, and that is, how long does the process take? I guess, when can you expect to see improvements in engagement? We had, many of the participants here are seeing a decrease in engagement, and by starting on this road or trying to implement some of these things, how long do you think it takes to see a turnaround? I know your journey was about an 8-year journey that we've been on now. When did you start seeing some payback?
Yeah, I want it done by Wednesday. When can you take care of that?
That is a really great question. I think we could say we saw some, ASTD is a great organization. I've been here a little over 10 years and wouldn't want to be anyplace else. And I think a lot of our ASTDers would say that, regardless of the level of engagement we've actually had. But I think if you go back 6 years, we were seeing some improvement, 5 years a little bit more. But I want to say in the last 3 years, when we've really kind of hunkered down on those 3 characteristics, creating a culture, hiring the right people, and not blowing it, it's in the last 3 years that we've really seen that movement occur. Now, it's not just on engagement, because we've also, another way it's affected our recruitment is that we've put people who were just barely ready to go into new positions in those new positions and said, go for it. Go do it. We know you can do this, and go have some fun while you're at it. And that's worked. And so, I think that's part of what's really given wings to this effort in the last 3 years.
Thank you, Julie. It's been really a pleasure, and it's always a joy to work with you. We appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us on this in terms of this. And folks that are on the call, ASTD does it right. They're doing it right. It's neat to see.
They practice what they preach.
They do.
Well, we're going to conclude our webinar today. We want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you very much, Julie, for your participation as well and your experience and insight. I'm highlighting here the 2 articles that are available. Again, I'll send you an email with links to these articles, and also a link to the next webinar that we'll be conducting. If you do have questions in the meantime, there's our email addresses and our contact information. We'd love to hear from you and interact with you more. But again, thank you for attending. We look forward to having you on one of our future webinars.